And when life knocked you down, jump back up and said, it's not over until I win.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome to the Goals Over Benzos YouTube channel, where I'll be running a marathon every weekend and training for a full distance Ironman triathlon. But most importantly, I'll be talking about recovering from benzo withdrawal and hopefully encouraging somebody else to do the same. It's a beautiful morning here in Kingsland, Georgia. The birds are chirping, the yellow flies are stinging, and I am gearing up to run marathon number 20 of 2022. So as I briefly touched on last week, you know, rehabs and hospitals, they don't really understand benzodiazepines. And so if you check yourself into detox or rehab or whatever, then they will try, most oftentimes, will try to rip you off the medication in less than a week, which is damn near inhumane. And it doesn't work at all. There's no success rate in that. I'll never forget the first rehab that I checked myself into. My dad dropped me off at the front door. It was a very pitiful experience. I had my little backpack on. I had my tail tucked in between my legs like it was my first day of school or something. And I was starting to get in pretty bad shape from the withdrawal going in to rehab, right? Which is really the only reason I checked in, because I ran out of pills. I didn't care. I didn't really care about getting clean at that time, because I still considered it an impossibility. But I checked myself in because I needed more pills. And like I was saying, I was in pretty bad shape going in, and I was experiencing withdrawal. And when I'm experiencing withdrawal, I shut down from everything and everybody. I don't talk to no one, and because my brain is just in survival mode. So I wasn't trying to like chat up any of these patients or anything like that. I was just in total shut off mode and freaking miserable. But as soon as the nurses, I explained to them, hey, this is the medication that I take. As soon as the nurses gave me my medication, then little old me personality came shooting back to life. And all of a sudden, I was kind of the life of the party, man, for that week. I was really enjoying myself and cracking jokes with the nurses and making all the other patients laugh. And the nurses couldn't really wrap their head around it. They're like, damn, everybody else is like throwing up and you're over here dancing. What's going on with this? There's actually one occasion where, anyways, me and this girl, I was dancing with this girl playfully in the rehab, and the nurse did not like it, and so she was like, all right, you're out of here, you're getting kicked out. And what I said was, lady, if you kick me out of this rehab, I'm gonna die. And what I meant was, you know, if you kick me out, then I'm gonna die from like addiction and pills and all that. But the way that she took it was that I was threatening to kill myself. So they ended up Baker acting me for 72 hours, and I had to hang out in a frickin' psych ward with like legitimate crazy people for 72 hours. Now, I mean, as soon as I got there, the people that were checking me in, they're like, okay, this is obviously a mistake. You seem fine. We'll get you out of here promptly. But yeah, man, I had a nice tweaker meth head roommate for 72 hours. So good times. Once the 72 hours was up, they sent me back to that same facility. I got to go back to my friends and pick up where I left off. More importantly, I got to have my pills again. Right. So for that first experience of that rehab, they tapered me down, and I got down to about 0.5, 0.25. And I'm not, like, if you guys have experience, which you probably do with tapering, then you know that sometimes the withdrawal effects don't kick in for about 3 days. Okay, so I was able to kind of coast through that rehab experience and graduate and say a bunch of inspirational mumbo jumbo crap to all the other patients and all the other nurses that I didn't really mean, and everybody was like, this guy is going places, but nothing got accomplished, because as soon as that last dose ran out and the withdrawal effects did start kicking in, and I was about to go to this halfway house, it was like, oh dude, we're back at ground zero, man. Full-blown withdrawals kicked in, and I was in the evil version of Alice in Wonderland going into this halfway house, man, filled with like 12 other dudes. And as I've talked about before, when you're in full withdrawal, you can't talk. You have aphasia. So I was kind of thrown into this halfway house without the ability to speak, and terrified out of my mind. And they're asking me to, I just wanted to curl up in the darkest corner of my bed and like, just please leave me alone. I think I'm gonna die here. And they were expecting me to go to AA meetings and talk at AA meetings, and to make breakfast for myself and do all these things and go to morning groups and all this shit. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna die. And nobody understood. Therapists, counselors. I mean, my counselor came off cocaine, so he didn't know what I was talking about. Nobody knew what I was talking about. Nobody had experience with benzos. So I was just in a place where you're supposed to be getting help, and I was the freak show. And I would call my mom, and I try to explain with my little messed up speech, like, this is not going to work. I cannot do this. And God bless her mentality back then, and I can't blame her for it. Her mentality back then was, well, if people can get off heroin, then my son should be able to get off benzos. And that's just, it's just a whole different ballgame. And plus too, I was drinking back then, and I was kind of a real douchebag. So people weren't really on my side, as they shouldn't have been in the first place, you know? So when I try to explain things, I understandably know that they're like, all right, well, he's just trying to talk his way out of this. And but I wasn't. This halfway house was expecting me to get a job and rejoin society and get an apartment. And I couldn't even leave my bedroom, okay? So that wasn't gonna happen. And I kept on telling them that and saying, like, this isn't working. I'm gonna have to go to a long-term inpatient rehab. And my options were pretty limited because I had no money, and a lot of the rehabs in Jacksonville, they don't offer the option to taper off of benzos for long-term. But they did say that, I can't remember the name of this rehab. It was probably rehab in jail. It was probably one of the worst experiences of my life, this particular rehab. And they said they did offer some, I think it was like Boost Bar, which doesn't really even do anything. But at the time, I was like, all right, it's better than nothing. Let's sign me up and let's go. So they shipped me back to that same detox facility first, because they had to do some type of paperwork, and make sure you're stable for about 3 days or whatever, and then they ship you off to rehab. And I would try to explain to them like, hey, no, I am not stable. My heart rate is through the freaking roof. I can't breathe. Like, just look at my eyes. I mean, my pupils were huge. I'm like, do I look stable? Is there anything about me that appears normal? And I mean, one nurse, the other patients thought I was a freak show because I wouldn't talk to anybody. I wouldn't make eye contact. I wouldn't leave my room. And the nurse, there was one nurse that was there who I had become friends with my last day there just a few weeks ago. And I wouldn't talk, like I couldn't talk to her, and I was in shut off mode. And she was like, damn, what's up with you, man? Like, well, where's the old, snappy dancing guy that was just here a couple weeks ago? And she didn't understand, and I couldn't really explain it to her. And I was tired of trying to explain it to people. But yeah, so they ended up shipping me off to this inpatient. I can't remember how long I was there. I think I was only there for about 2 months before I finally was able to convince my dad to come and pick me up. But for people who are in withdrawal and you're agoraphobic and you can't barely even leave your house, just imagine being trapped inside of a rehab facility with like 100 other people that you have to wake up with, that you have to go to the cafeteria and eat with, and then you have to go in a fucking meeting filled with 100 people, and then you have to try to share about stuff. Dude, it was jail. Like, this was worse than jail, because in jail, no one really gave a damn, and they was like, all right, man, just let him stay in his bunk. Whatever. We don't know who he is. In rehab, they kept on prodding, and you had to follow a schedule. Dude, it was beyond miserable. And, I mean, just 50 days of... I was a total freak show. I got treated that way as well not really by the clinicians. I mean, the clinicians just didn't understand. And my therapist was like, all right, well, have you tried deep breathing? But yeah, the other patients, I mean, I got picked on because they knew I couldn't really defend myself. And I couldn't really talk. They probably just thought, I'm like, okay, this guy's a really shy and awkward person. And it was just hell on earth, man. Just another chapter of hell on earth. And I mean, it was such a miserable experience and left such a bitter taste in my mouth towards rehab facilities and doctors and clinicians. When my dad came and picked me up and we went to Georgia, I kind of vowed to myself, I was like, I will never try to get sober. But, I mean, I've obviously had a change of heart because I've been sober from alcohol for over 6 years now and sober from benzos for over 5, maybe coming up on 6. Unfortunately, I've forgotten my sobriety date and I don't know how to look that up or whatever, but it's around there. And so on the next episode, I'll talk about the tapering process that actually worked, the rehab I went to that was actually a success, and how I was able to find a doctor that was willing to do a long-term taper, which is really a miracle. So thank you for stopping by the channel, seeing what it has to offer. I really appreciate it. If you are going through benzo withdrawal, I acknowledge you. I understand how hard you're fighting. Please hang in there. It gets so much easier.
And hope that you don't suffer, but take the pain. I hope when the moment comes, you'll say, I did it all.